Hey folks.
Hey everybody. Good afternoon, not good morning today.
We are behind.
We are behind. We've been a little busy today getting ready for another one of our classes.
So, what do we have on the round table? Well, we've been
Brenda,
demoted.
We've been demoted. Our round table keeps getting smaller and smaller, doesn't it?
I know. We went for the big bus last
It's a
week.
round end table today. Well, we've got an interesting subject today, you guys. It was kind of prompted by one of our friends, Martha, who brought up some fun questions to me the other day. So it got Brenda and I talking. We're going to talk about plants, things that are toxic to plants, like how you can kill your plants pretty easy, and how plants can kill each other. So, kind of an interesting
it's a
subject.
war out there.
It is. So, Brenda, I'm going to start off, and I have with me today, I'm sure a lot of you may have seen this, Mindy Lou, I'm bending down, here we go. And we've gotten a couple of calls about this in the garden center. I know, I don't juggle, Brenda. Do you?
No.
Oh, well, we should learn. So, I've had a lot of calls saying, what is the big green baseball that's falling all over the road? Well, you guys, these are black walnuts. Now, this is not the nut. The nut is actually inside. This is the shell that grows around the walnut. And you can see, like, here's one. This one has been broken. And it is releasing this black substance. Is called juglone. And that can be a menace to your garden. Okay, so this is where it comes from. This is the black walnut tree. And this plant is, are you ready, Brenda, for your big word of the day? Alleliopathic. I just love saying the word. So alleliopathy is when a plant produces a substance that inhibits the growth of other plants. Isn't that interesting?
Is that a Scrabble word?
Oh boy, I wonder how many points that would be. We should add that up. So plants are alleliopathic because they want to create cultures in which they're the only ones that live there. So it kind of inhibits other plants and creates groves of plants. So a lot of these alleliopathic plants you'll see grow in groves, and that's all you'll see. Like some people say a beech tree, oak trees can be, sugar maples, black walnut, everybody knows about. So what does that mean for you as a gardener? Well, there are several ways you can combat the alleliopathic effects of this plant. And it's going to be in all parts of the plant. The leaves, the stem, the roots. And we know that the roots really kind of concentrate around the drip line of the tree. And so you're going to find a lot of the juglone. That's the substance that is poisonous or toxic in this plant. So one way that you can combat that, there is a list of plants. And we're going to make that available, Brenda. It's a long list that can tolerate levels of juglone. But there's a lot of conflicting research about this, and we've been cramming all morning like we always do. And some people say it doesn't have much of an effect, some people it does. So we'll make the list available to you here in the garden center, but certainly I think you're going to need to experiment on your own. One thing you can do if you want to grow under a black walnut is you can try raised beds so that you're raising the soil and the plant roots won't get down into the soil under the tree.
But then would you want to cover up the roots of the tree when that's going to be smothering them?
It can be. And so, again, one of my best pieces of advice is if you have a black walnut, just don't plant under it. There are some grasses that are tolerant of the juglone, like the tall fescue and Kentucky blue. So you can grow grass under them. But it's also going to be very shady under the tree. So I just say...
Heuchera is one. I know Heuchera is one plant. Coravals. That's the only one I remember.
Yep. So anyway, you can try to improve drainage. You can add organic matter. The juglone can be tied up in heavy soils like clay, so it won't be as toxic to plants. It can be really bad in sandy soils, which we don't have that problem here. But if you have black walnuts, my other advice is remove these.
Can you eat those?
Yes, and let me tell you. So growing up, I grew up in the mountains.
Here comes the story.
So Miss Mary, she was one of my friend's grandmas. And she loved to make, and it was delicious, Brenda. You would have loved it. A black walnut cake with an Italian cream cheese dressing. but she only made them a couple of times a year when the walnuts were ready. So me and all my buddies would have to go out harvesting these walnuts, and we soaked them in buckets of water to get this wet so this would rot off. But you have to wear gloves because this can be a little toxic to you. I'm not very sensitive to it, but you know, I have like chef's hands.
Would it keep people away from us?
Oh gosh.
Keep my husband away from me?
Oh Lord, you gonna go home and use this as perfume, little jug long. But we would soak them and then get the nuts out for her and crack them up, and we always got the first cake. So that's a sweet memory of the black walnuts. They're delicious.
It's my favorite.
I
Walnut's
love
my favorite.
black walnuts.
Yeah.
But if you don't want these everywhere, because guess who else likes them? Squirrels. And they will plant these everywhere. And they're hard to remove, aren't they? They have a huge taproot. And if you don't get the whole taproot out, and it'll send a taproot immediately.
See, I haven't seen these before. I mean, I don't have any.
Well,
around
you
my
might be
place.
too high up because you're up in elevation. I have them everywhere. So I try to get my neighbors to cut them down. It is a valued tree for hardwood. It's a gorgeous wood for
definitely.
furniture,
Dark.
cabinets. But if you don't want these, get rid of them. Find somebody to make a cake for you. Martha was saying she was throwing them back over her neighbor's fence because her neighbor had them, but then she realized that the squirrels were just planting them, so she's getting more and more walnut trees. So get rid of these. These are the seeds.
One way to identify it, because there are some other trees that look kind of similar
Yes.
with the leaves,
Yep.
is that the branches are alternate,
Yep.
right, as opposed to opposite.
Yep.
So they're alternate branching, and then the leaves are opposite.
Yep. And this is called a stemmed compound leaf. So you see this, Mindy Lou? There's the stem. Compound mean it has more than one. These are leaflets. Now this also can look like the ailanthus tree,
Right.
the tree of heaven, which
Right.
is also alleliopathic.
Oh,
Which is interesting, isn't it? So yeah, if you see these in your yard, get rid of them, unless you want tons of black walnuts.
Okay.
And lots of squirrels.
we done?
All right, yep, so that's my story, Brenda Lee.
All right.
All
The
right.
next thing we're going to talk about
Uh-oh.
is dog urine and its toxicity. How's that?
What a great topic. I hope
I
you
know.
guys aren't having your coffee this morning. What else can we talk about?
Well,
Okay.
it is a problem.
It is a
Because the
problem.
dogs got to go.
Yep, this is true.
When they got to go, they got to
When
go.
nature calls.
And the interesting thing is it will damage trees. Not only your grass and your plants,
Ah.
it'll damage trees, especially younger trees.
Oh, interesting.
And that's one reason why it's always nice to get a female, because she doesn't lift her leg.
Or a short dog like me, because he can't reach anything. Including the female dogs.
But it will, what it does is the dog urine has a lot of salt in it,
Oh, yeah.
and a lot of urea, which is a nitrogen, a compounded
Yes,
nitrogen
very
that
harsh.
burns.
Yeah.
That burns.
Yeah.
And that's what it does. It kind of scalds that tree. It starts flaking and cracking and then opening up and creating a wound, which insects and diseases, they're much more susceptible to insects and diseases.
Right, oh, yeah, good point. Yeah. Okay.
So that's one thing, with especially with young trees. And down the road, if a dog is peeing in that same area, which everyone knows they have their perfect spot that they like to go back to. Myself having 2 labs, I know exactly where Cricket goes and Ellie.
Isn't that
Bella
fascinating,
goes.
though?
But so over time, if it keeps peeing in that same area, it will harm that soil in that area and harm the tree roots. So I always like to say the same thing with plants. We'll go over that in a second. But I always think it would be a good idea is if you had one spot that you want to train your dog to go in, and it's really not that hard to do. And if you have a male dog, you can put up a stick or a plastic something with some height
Or a
on it.
bookshelf with his magazines.
That's right. Or that chair leg that always likes to come around your house, and so take that chair out. But anyways, so you can put it there, put some gravel around it, and train that dog to go out. Every time it goes out, have it go in that area where there's no plants around, or a
good
little
idea.
mulch bed.
Yeah.
And they do say within 12 hours, if you can flush that area, that it should be good to go
Okay.
without any damage. But after 12 hours, there's a lot of damage to it.
Okay, huh,
All right.
interesting.
So then some of the plants, talking about the dog urine and also talking about salt.
Ah,
Right. So it is getting that time of year pretty soon, usually around December, mid-December, we start seeing some snow and ice coming our way.
Yep.
And a lot of people use salt on your sidewalks, roadways, driveways,
yep, steps.
steps. Right? All that is very, very harmful to your plants.
Yes.
Very harmful to your plants. And also if you have mortar, it will eat that mortar.
Yeah.
So you need to try to find like cat litter we talked about.
Yep.
Not the clumping form.
Right.
But also you have to, one thing that was negative about the cat litter was it will stick to your feet and you'll track it in. So
Right.
that's a big downfall right
what
there.
else? We saw sand, that'll give you traction. There are some acetate-based de-icers that aren't quite as harmful, but
Right.
yeah.
So a lot of that, what happens is you put it on your sidewalk and then you blow your sidewalk off, and then all that salt goes over into your planting beds.
Right.
And it's really harmful to almost all the plants in the soil because the salt will dry up.
Right.
The moisture that's there, especially if you have clay soil, will make it more compact. And then also the with the salt does the it burns the plant.
Yeah,
it
burns. It was the nitrogen, wasn't it? Yeah.
It burns the plant, which we know that from chemicals and fertilizers and stuff. And
Right.
that's, the nitrogen really is a big burner to plants
Yeah.
and stuff.
Oh,
you
yes.
over fertilize, or if you don't water it in, it gets on the plant leaves.
Right.
All that will burn a plant. So there are a few plants that are less susceptible to the burn and also to dog urine. And one of them is a juga.
Which that surprised me.
I know, because
yeah.
it's a little tender.
Yeah.
And also, we don't have one here, but also the winter creeper, the euonymus, because it's a little heavier leaf. All right.
That's a tough plant.
And then we have the creeping thyme. All right. That's more salt tolerant plant, and also the Santolina, which has a wonderful fragrance.
Oh, I love this one.
And this one stays evergreen.
That's great in containers. Too.
Great in containers too, but this is less susceptible to salt burn. Lamb's ear is another one.
Yep.
All right, and then daylilies. All right, and this you need to take into consideration, especially up by your mailboxes where you know that the plow's going to come by and the sander's going to come by and they're going to throw some salt there. They're going to throw a lot of snow.
And they'll do a brine too, which can be really
Right,
nasty.
before the
Yeah,
storm comes
they'll
in.
pre-
So
pre-
all that is going to burn your plants up there.
Yeah.
Evergreens, anything you have up there. So it's always a good idea to make sure you're planting far enough away from that spray. And also, I like to use a lot of annuals in those areas. And the same thing along the sidewalks. Use a lot of annuals because then you're not as concerned about killing a perennial
That's
plant.
a good point.
And they're a little bit more salt tolerant, most of them, and you can change out the soil a little bit,
Right.
trying to freshen it up. The what's another good point that I wanted to talk about? Oh, also on your sidewalk is, we talked about the salt, but you also have to know there's a runoff, where that water's running off your sidewalk in the wintertime.
Right. If it's a well-built sidewalk, it
Right,
will drain.
it's going to pitch a certain way.
Yeah.
It's not going to be flat. It's going to
Yeah.
have a little bit of a slope where the water's going to run off, and you have to know where that is because that's where you don't want to put a plant in the ground.
Right.
And save that area for annuals. I mean, when you shovel your snow, where do you throw your snow? When you're shoveling your sidewalk, which side of the sidewalk do you throw your snow on? That is where you don't want to put your annuals or your perennials or any shrubs.
Right.
They're going to be
And
damaged.
you had mentioned this before, like we talk about. We go out in the rain all the time in our yard to observe drainage and see
I do
what's-
all the time.
Yeah, so now is the time to do it, before it's icy and you can't get out and you see where it's draining, especially if you're in a new home or you put in new areas. Go outside in the rain and see what's happening in your yard. See where things are running
See
off.
why something's washing out. Take an
Yeah.
umbrella, go out there. I do it all the time.
Yeah, I do
and
too.
Make sure my
We should do it together, Brad.
make sure the catch basins are clean. And all that stuff.
Exactly, yeah.
So the bottom line is, when you're next to your sidewalk, when you consider planting, think about if you're going to put salt down in the wintertime, where the runoff's going to be, all right?
Yep.
Where the water's going to run off.
Yep.
All right. And the same thing for the roadsides and the edges of your driveway. Now, when after you throw that salt down and stuff, I had a customer that always salted their driveway whenever a storm was coming in. Always put it down. Had a stilby and also had hydrangeas. And every spring they were dead
Yeah.
because they would go. And it was a very steep driveway, so they had to do something to get their cars down. So they would go and blow off the driveway after,
Right.
twice a week or something,
Right.
and then there goes all the salt and stuff back into the
Yep.
plants and into that soil.
Yep.
Right. Can you think of anything else? Did I miss something? I know we.
No,
went
and
through
one
that
thing
pretty
to
quick.
talk about is there is a list of salt tolerant plants, especially for those of you who have two homes, one at the beach, one here. There are plants that can tolerate salt, but a lot of them don't grow in our area.
Right, and there's a
because
lot
they're
of
meant for more for the beach side.
right, and there's a lot of what they call sea spray, salt
Yes.
tolerant, and
Yeah.
then also the ground salt.
Right.
And the ground salt is where we really get hurt. I mean,
Exactly.
it dehydrates.
Yeah.
It throws a lot of urea into the ground and changes your pH, makes it more alkaline, which we know a lot of our soil is acidic, and a lot of our plants like acidic soil.
Right.
So it does make a huge difference if you're trying to plant a stilby or hostas or anything near your walkway that you've been throwing salt on forever. You know,
Right.
they're just not going to be happy.
Right. And I know some people say, oh, well, I put Epsom salts on my plants. And some people do. It's a mineral in the Epsom salts that they're getting, and salt will help release some nutrients, but that's in very small amounts.
And also blocks them too, though.
Yeah, yes, and it can. You're right. Plants can tolerate a little bit of salt, but over time and lots of salt they can't. So
Build up. So
that's
think
a
about
plant
that.
killer.
Maybe use some annuals in that area. Around your mailbox, maybe use some annuals. Daylilies would work if you
Yeah.
need something, a perennial in that
Or
area.
do a swath of like a gravel mulch or a rock mulch right
Mhm.
against your sidewalk, so you don't even have to worry about it. It's a beautiful addition to the garden. You don't have to replace it.
Right,
So, all right. So, plant killers 101. We're getting ready for
and
Halloween.
you didn't
aren't we?
no. The other thing that we're going to talk about next week is we're going to talk about dividing perennials, which ones to divide,
Yes.
how to divide, and why we divide.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
And then the week after that, which is Halloween week,
That's Halloween week.
it's our spooktacular week.
Ooh, we're so excited.
I know. So we are going to talk about bulbs.
Yes, we have all of our fall bulbs are in. Don't put them in now. Wait, but you might want to come get them because we're selling out of a lot of the varieties. But hold on to them. Don't put them in the ground yet. We'll talk to you about that. And also, if you have questions about things that you want to divide, if you want to know if you can or not, shoot them to us. Either call Mindy or put them on Facebook so that we'll have an idea. We're going to be digging up lots of stuff from our yards to bring in to divide
And show you how to
share.
do it.
Can't wait. We'll show you how to
Right,
do it.
because you don't want to plant your bulbs until the ground gets 50 degrees, and it's still pretty warm.
It's still pretty warm, but
I
we're
know.
getting cold this weekend.
Right, and so if you haven't done so already, get those house plants in.
Yep, and protect. Probably your summer annuals are going to take a dive this week.
Thank
and
goodness.
You'll be ready.
They get them-
I know.
It's time to pull them
We're
out.
ready. I'm ready to change my container. So a lot's going on this week, Brenda.
All righty, folks.
All right, bye, you guys.
Thank you. Happy Wednesday.